thank you so much for joining us today and being here for this incredible episode of Thrive with R3. What an unbelievable story we heard from Michelle Klein talking about her ability to triumph from tragedy, not just through her Olympic career, but also incidents in her professional life where she used her lessons from overcoming a tragic accident to help her as she moved through her career and into adulthood.
We talked a lot about resilience and well-being, the importance of gratitude, the importance of perspective, and the importance of really never quitting and continuing to have hope despite the degree of adversity that we are navigating.
Welcome to this episode of Thrive with R3. Today, we have an incredible story of triumph over tragedy. Former Olympic athlete, speed skater Michelle Klein is here today and is going to share a life-altering event that changed her life and outlook forever. Well, welcome to the show, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have you on this episode and sharing your story. So let's start off by having you tell us, about yourself, from childhood through where you're at now today in your career.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I spent the first 25 years of my life with skates or on skates. And so, yes, I was a two-time Olympic athlete, retired after the 94 Olympics, went on to go to college later in life where I studied kinesiology, exercise and fitness, along with massage therapy. Sports was my whole life, so I thought I would be an athletic trainer. Fast forward shortly after, I learned about hospitality. And so I now live in the space of hospitality. So I am the director of special projects and events for Morrissey Hospitality, where I have an opportunity to make a difference or wow people daily, again, through food and beverage and experiences, along with I am an ambassador for the American Red Cross.
So when we first met a couple weeks ago, we talked about your story and you shared how your childhood was such a prominent kind of support beam, if you will, and how it shaped you as an adult, but also how you thrived as an Olympian. Can you talk a little bit about what your childhood was like here in Minnesota?
Absolutely. So my mother comes from a family of 9 kids, and they were all speed skaters. And so on my 5th birthday, my parents bought me figure skates. And when my grandparents found out, they said, absolutely not, no way. All of our grandchildren, and there are 25 plus, are going to try speed skating at least once. For some reason, I absolutely loved it. I don't know if it was the cold, the ice, spending time with grandparents, my parents, but loved it. So it really started at an early age. And I think when I really think back to that time, I mean, really, truly, I remember my first race. It was one lap and the starting gun went off. I fell down. I got up. I fell down. I got up. But what I remember most about that race was my grandfather and him standing on the side, cheering me on. And when the race was finished, he said to me, I am proud of you because you didn't quit, you didn't give up, and you finished the race. So I think that's when I first said, this is interesting. You know, at least from a young age, you don't know what you don't know, but kind of understanding the process of maybe my first competition, even though I didn't know it was competition at that time. So that's truly how it started. And then from there, it just was kind of every winter weekend with my grandparents and my parents, kind of traveling from lakes to ice rinks. And that's how it truly started.
Cool. Michelle, quick question or follow up. How old were you when you did that first race? I'm curious.
Yep, 5. So I got my first pair of skates at 5.
And
first
so
race,
your grandfather had 9 children, all who speed skated.
correct.
What a cool story in terms of they had to have some competitive blood in that family, I assume. But what a great story that he just acknowledged. I'm just glad you got back up. I'm glad you finished. I mean, what
Yes.
an important message for a 5-year-old. And in this day and age, when we see parents getting fights at little league games, right? And yelling at, umps who are literally teenagers themselves. What a nice story of kind of motivation,
And to kind of to play on that a little bit as
Yeah,
well
please.
is I think I was very fortunate. Both my parents, when you talk about these little league and what we see today, both of my parents only have been or and continue to be supportive. They never pushed, right? It was really that support, and they really kind of allowed us to do what we want to do. Again, like I said, never pushing but
Mhm.
supporting. I think I shared. I think what really started not only that at an early age, as I fast forward a little bit to age 12, it was going to be my first national championships. And my parents and I got in the car and we started driving from the Twin Cities to Butte, Montana. Along the way, spending time with my parents, but getting to have great conversations and get excited for this first national championships. And I remember at that time I was 12 and I was the youngest in the division. And I remember my father saying, Michelle, if you win, you can have whatever you want. And I could just feel, now that I think back to that day, I can feel my mother in the front seat going, what are you doing? What are you saying to her, right? She can have
Yeah.
whatever she wants. But in my father's mind, he's like, she's 12. She's the youngest. It's her first national championships. She won't win. Now, he didn't say that to me, but I know today he shared that's what he
Sure.
thought. So here we go, national championship. I ended up winning. And so as we're driving home, my father is terrified. He's thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to get a second job. She's going to want a swimming pool. I told her she could have whatever she wanted. And when my parents asked me, you won, we said you could have what you want. What do you want? And still to this day, I'm very proud because this has kind of helped shape who I am today. My father said, what do you want? And I said, I want you to quit smoking. And so instead of asking for that pool or something, monetary, it was important for me. I even get a little choked up right now. It was important for me to have him quit smoking. And that day he took his pack of cigarettes, smushed them up, threw them out, and never smoked. So,
Mm.
when I think of my
Wow.
parents and we celebrate their anniversaries, I always say, you know, I may be who I am today, but it started because I had that great support with parents that had these values and the things that they taught me to help become who I am today. So I love sharing that story because I just have amazing parents.
Yeah,
So
that is. We hear so many stories nowadays of kids that get burned out because they specialize in just one sport or one specific skill set in one sport. I have a friend, for example, whose 8-year-old is already specializing as a pitcher in baseball, and it's like,
Wow.
the tendons aren't even formed yet, like to really,
Yeah.
So anyways, I love that story in terms of how your parents saw you as a developing child beyond and as a bigger priority than just the victory, right? That's
Yeah.
great. So let me segue. How, if you then extrapolate from there, because God, that's such a great story to start this discussion with. How did speed skating impact your life or affect your life? And I know that is a big question, so take liberty with it. But how has that impacted your life?
Well, and I think truly it's twofold because I'm going to say if I divide and conquer because we're going to talk about tragedy over triumph, right? Or
Hmm.
triumph over
Yeah.
tragedy. And if I separate that and I leave my story of hope and come back to that and I truly talk about speed skating, right? Just speed skating at a very young age. I mean, when I think of I have dear friends still to this day that I've known. We're called Super Six. I've known them since I've been
Yeah.
5 in middle school, right? There's 6 of us. But I share that because as we entered high school, and I think of kids today in high school, I do not have kids, but kids today, it could be sports or studies or art or theater or proms and dances and football games or whatever that may be. I never really experienced that. So my high school years were very different. I was only in the high school or in the classroom 2 out of 4 years. It was first and last quarter at school, second and third gone on the road in Milwaukee with the coaches and the teams at the facility, training, tutors. And I share that because when I look back today, and a lot of people will say, well, if you could do it again, would you do it the same way? Well, absolutely. Not only the places and the people I've met, where I've been, what I've seen, but speed skating itself has taught me how to manage time, how to set goals, go after things I want, or um, that dedication, that drive, that kind of, when I'm looking at trying to make me a better person tomorrow, all those, if I'm going to call it values, kind of started and were built upon my skating that I now take with me today in life.
When you look at what you've done as, that experience as a child. I'm an Army brat. We moved a lot when I was a kid, but I had the opportunity to live overseas several times and live in different parts of the country. And I've had people ask me that same question. Oh, how hard that must have been. But when you look at the positives you get from those experiences, they really do shape who you become. I mean, I'm much more resilient to change than a lot of my peers. And part of that is because of that constant change I experienced as a child. And I look at it as, but look at what I got to experience that nobody else got to experience. I think I love how you take those experiences of, no, I may not have gotten to have like the normal high school years that somebody else did, but look what I got to do. And how cool is that? And how that benefited me in the future. That's incredible. So, and I wonder too, like, let's dive in a little bit because, speed skating, you had this opportunity. So, you're top in nationals. You're you now have this opportunity to become the Olympic trials. Let's talk about the tragedy that occurred. Let's kind of dive into that a little bit and share your story and how your upbringing, the supportive parents you have. And I love that quote from your grandfather. I coached
Mhm.
track this spring, and a little girl fell on the hurdles, but man, she got back up and finished the race. And I said the exact same thing to her. I'm so proud of you. You finished the race. Like, you could have walked off and been like, I'm done. And, so share with us how, the incident that occurred and then how this helped you to kind of rebuild on that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, just to rewind quickly. So, as I mentioned, started skating at 5. I made my first junior world team at age 13, traveled to Japan to compete internationally. At 14, I made my first U.S. national team. So, did a lot at a young age. And by no means am I a natural talent. Okay. I had to work very hard at my trade. I always said I wish I had that little bit of talent to go with the hard work. But that's where that dedication, hard work, I think, comes from, that deep down, that burning sensation or the fire in the belly. Um, and like I said, I fast forward past high school, and now here I am. I was the 2-time U.S. national champion. I was in the best shape, the prime of my life, right? I was right there. That dream was becoming reality, as in the Olympic trials were around the corner. So my story of hope goes like this. It was June 19th, 1991. I remember it like it was yesterday. Um, Again, as I shared, it was just 6 months before the U.S. Olympic trials and 8 months before the 1992 Winter Olympic Games in Albertville, France. The national team was in Chicago, and we were heading from Chicago to Milwaukee. I was in a team vehicle, which was a Jeep. I was a passenger in the back seat behind the passenger side. We were on the inside lane of 4 lanes of traffic, and the driver went to reach for change for the toll booth and lost control of the wheel. We started to fishtail across 4 lanes of traffic, and we're headed right towards this large light pole. At the last minute, the driver turned the wheel, and I ended up sandwiched between the light pole and the person next to me. When I woke up in the hospital, the doctor said to me, "You have a lacerated spleen and kidney, you have a punctured lung, broken ribs, a torn rotator cuff, and I needed not one, but 2 blood transfusions to save my life." So I kind of spent the next 12 days in the hospital. My mother's a nurse. She was there with me by my bedside. We headed home back here to the Twin Cities to start that healing process. And when I talk about healing, and I don't just mean physically, I mean mentally, right? As I shared, I was in the best prime that I was positioned to make that Olympic team. And I think what is important, and this is what I learned about myself at that time at age 23, is I never asked myself why. Why now? Why me? Right? Instead, I said to myself, I have a new passion for life, or I found a different spirit because I survived. And so I'm here, and I didn't want to at that time take anything else for granted. I was very fortunate. It wasn't my time. And so there was a purpose. And fast forward to today, we'll circle back, but I think as of early as today, I was thinking about this and I found a new purpose, my new gold medal, as I'm going to call it, but I'll share. So again, I healed in the Twin Cities, spent a lot of time, and I remember asking the doctor, "How do I know when I'm okay to rejoin the team in Colorado Springs?" And he said, "I can't tell you, Michelle. You know your body best." So I spent a lot of time with meditation, visualization, kind of seeing things, trying to move it forward, if I want to call it, and just really getting in sync with my body, probably more than I ever thought I had because of being such in shape at the time. 2 months later, I joined the national team. So now we're just 6 months or 6 weeks before the Olympic trials. So when I went into my first Olympic trials, there was no pressure, no stress, because here I am, not 100%, but I'm back on my skates and something I loved. So I did compete, and how, this is a different why, how or why, I set an American record, something no American woman has ever done. I qualified to skate in all 5 races at the 1992 Winter Olympic Games in Albertville, France. The newspaper was calling me a miracle, and Entertainment Tonight followed me around as the comeback kid. I always say media, they have to have a story. My story wasn't necessarily I was going to win a gold medal, but I was that comeback kid. And I did compete in all 5 races in Albertville, but I will share with you, I finished almost last in all 5 races. And I remember at that time looking up in the sky with tears running down my face. And I said, "Grandpa, why let me come so far to, in my eyes, skate so bad?" After that, I realized this is not going to be my story. I have more to give. And so then I did go on to continue to train. I made the 1994 Olympic team, which I competed in Lillehammer, Norway. I'm happy to share I had all top finishes, top 20 finishes, personal best times. And so at that time, I knew I had done it. I was the best version of me, or the best I could be. I could now hang up my skates and retire and kind of figure out what was next in life. So that is my story of hope. And I thank you for letting me share it.
I want to go back a little bit because what I love what you started with is that you never asked why. And what we know, and as a clinical and medical and forensic psychologist, I could tell you so many people can't get over the why question. What do you think it was about your upbringing, your makeup, your character, your personality? You could fill in the blank, of course, Michelle, that you just quickly went from, I ain't going to ask why. I'm just going to redirect my meaning and purpose and focus on the next goal. What do you think it was about you or your history that allowed you? Because that is such a high resilient move, right? That's such a, and to do that at such a young age is really uncommon and
I
impressive.
think for me, well, thank you. I just think for
Yeah.
me, truly, when I look back, and it's that it was that digging deep to realize that I almost lost my life. And knowing that I was in that position, I really had a choice. I could either sit here and feel sorry for myself and say why, I had trained my entire life for this, and why me, why now, right? But instead, I chose to say, I am here, I'm alive, and there is a purpose. What that purpose is at that time, I didn't know, but I knew that I needed to take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and figure out it. how to get back to being me. Like again, that breathing correctly with that punctured lung, the walking. It was a wake up call to say I'm very fortunate, and I need to ensure that I don't take things for granted. And whatever my future, whatever laid ahead, whether it was the Olympics or not, I just was very fortunate, very grateful that I was still here. And there was just something in that powerful feeling that sometimes is hard to explain. It just, there was something with that. That's where that power, that's where that purpose, or perhaps my new vision or passion came from, was knowing that I am still here. It wasn't my time to depart. So,
I'm hearing a lot of gratitude, right? That again, I'm still here. I still can train. I still can move towards my goals, and that is such a powerful thing when we talk about well-being and resilience, right? Trying to keep a mind state of gratitude when we're facing adversity. Thanks for sharing that.
And you never gave up. Like you just kept going
Right.
forward and moving forward, which I think is really, really inspiring. You weren't going to
thank
let it
you.
get you down. You were going to keep
Yeah.
moving forward. So while you were going through that, were there, obviously I know it's, there's a lot that I always tell my kids, your mind is more powerful than you give it credit for. Like really, you can power, a lot of it's mental,
Hmm.
some of the things that they're going through. When you look at like other individuals in your life, whether it be your parents or teammates, were there others or resources that were there to help you through that recovery as well? Or did, because I imagine, as a kid, you didn't do it. It wasn't solely on your own. I mean, there's a lot that we do solely on our own, but who was there to kind of help guide you as well and support you through that?
Yeah. So when I think back to the time that I spent here in the Twin Cities healing before I actually rejoined the team in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Facility, it really was family, and that tight knit friendship that I have, the community. I come from a very small community, Circle Pines. So it really started homegrown support. And then when I joined the team or rejoined the team in Colorado Springs, it's that continuation of therapists and trainers and psychologists, and really the sports psychologists to kind of help you navigate. Um, and I think it's also being around the other athletes, right? Getting your mindset back to say, hey, while they're riding their bikes up Pikes Peak in the best shape of their life, I'm at the training center and I might be doing underwater swimming to help my lung capacity. I think it was really a combination. And then it's also that, I'm going to say, the inner, that the inside. And I don't think I've shared this yet, but to kind of fast forward, I think even today that when you surround yourself, who you surround yourself with is important, but it's also about a choice. You have a choice, right? So I have a choice to either be happy or to be negative. It is all up to me. So if I'm in that heated moment or I'm just like, oh, I step back and I say, you have a choice. And it's my choice. And I always share with my teams now, I say, our glasses can be half full or they can be half empty. I choose my glass to be half full, or sometimes I say I'd rather have it full. But I mean, it starts with self. And I know that's hard. Not everybody can do that, but you can have a conversation with yourself. You can have positive reinforcements around you. I look at my workspace at home right now, and before we started, I have like shine and go get it. And it's just those positive affirmations. And I just really try to stay on the positive side of things, um, because I want to help make a difference. And again, it starts with me.
And I love the sense of responsibility, right? That again, I don't want to project, but I'm hearing you say we all have a personal responsibility in how we frame that mindset and then how that carries us into our day. What's interesting, I love the little part where you said when you then got back to training and being surrounded by the other athletes. Because what's fascinating, there's a study, and I will look it up, but I can't remember the exact source. But there was a study done on productivity, and what they did is they random sampled people, and the only distinction, the variable that was manipulated, is whether you sat next to or sat within 10 feet proximity of people that were kind of goofing around all day or people that were uber focused. And what they found is that if you sat next to uber focused people and they're not interacting with you, they're just in the cubicle next to you, that's all it is, your productivity went up 20% versus when you sat around other people. And it's the modeling and the mirroring. And it's really interesting that you, in fairly short order, surrounded yourself with motivated, disciplined, dedicated, peers, which is kind of an interesting.
I do not know that study, but I'm glad you shared it because it
Yeah.
is true. I mean, even today, if I'm not necessarily in sport, right? I mean, uh, I always say, a smile is contagious, right?
Yeah.
Bring somebody along with you.
That's
So
right.
that is true. And that's why I say we all have a choice. I had just recently said on a work call, I said, we're going to stop using the word BUSY because we're all busy, right? And if we're not busy, we don't have a job. So
That's
let's
right.
just figure out how to reorganize or remotivate. But that word is taboo. We're no longer going to use BUSY. So
Yeah.
I said, we just got to figure out something else. So I always say it is. Again, speed skating is an individual sport, but yet you're a part of a team. And so again, to be a part of a team, you're right. It is about some kind of self-acceptance or self perseverance where I say, yes, I want to help take the others with me. I
Yeah.
want to be positive. I want them to come along with me for the ride and try to figure out. I think I shared, in my life today with what I do is I have to understand I may be a perfectionist. I can't expect that of others.
Mhm.
I may have wanted to win a gold medal, but not everybody wants to win a gold medal. Some people want to just sit on the bench, and that's okay. I just have to figure out how to motivate each individual because everybody's different.
Yeah.
So I think that's important today too. So where coming from an individual slash team sport to where now in my role, I just think it's important for me to share or, like I said, politely pull someone along or provide something positive or try to be contagious because life is short. And again, I go back to that. I don't want to take things for granted. And I
Yeah.
don't want to say why, or I'd rather have my glass half full than half empty.
Right. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to do another quick follow up. I'm not trying to monopolize the time, Jamie. Sorry, but I love what you said there, Michelle. And I'm curious, when you look at the lessons and experiences from your Olympic and your professional speed skating career, what what values or perspectives did you take from that as you then transitioned to your other professional career? Because you're not speed skating now, right? Obviously. So like when you then became post speed skater, right? Michelle Klein, what values and perspectives did you kind of take with you that were useful?
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting question because it's interesting to say I was a professional athlete, right? But
Right.
I was a two-time Olympic athlete. And so when you retire, trying to figure out or navigate the real world, what do you do next is a challenge itself. I
I
think
bet.
sometimes that was
Totally.
almost more or a larger, bigger challenge than my accident. And that may seem strange, but now you're walking into the real world. You're not training. You're not doing what you did your whole life for 25 years, right? So for me to start school or college, I'm like, I'm sitting in the front row. I never got to be in class, right? I want to be in that front row as a 25-year-old, right? I don't care if I'm the grandma in the class. I wanted to learn. I think what you do is you take those values and they're ingrained into you. So whether it's, again, you're not skating, but you still have to be dedicated at things. You still have to
Mhm.
manage times. You have to want things. You have to go for things. So all along, whether it's navigating after skating into this new scary world, because my degree is kinesiology, exercise, and fitness. I have my massage therapy degree. My whole life was sport. I thought I was going to be an athletic trainer. And then I get introduced to this world of hospitality. I'm like, what is this? Absolutely love it. And again, it's all those things of how do I make a difference? How do I find my purpose? And those, I'm going to call them, I know it's values, but I'm going to call them my tools that are in my toolkit that I learned that I just take with. And the question is, which one do I pull out at what time? And again, when we talk, I think Jamie, you had mentioned that being a army brat, right? Doing it, again, having this opportunity. it's not only the places and the people, but it's the things, it's the tools you learn so that you get to take those and now use those tools today. Um, quick note. I just wanted to share, and I don't even think I shared this last time, but when I first retired from skating, I to navigate the real world, I did a program called Kids and Ice, and what that is all these kids throughout the Milwaukee area would come in. It's like a field trip or a school program. These kids would come in. I'd talk a little bit about the Olympics, and then I'd teach the basics of skating. A lot of inner city kids have never put on a pair of skates before, right? But when they first came in, I would have to introduce myself. Hello, I'm Michelle Klein. I'm a two-time Olympic athlete. As soon as I would say that, the hands would go up. And of course, the first question would be, did you win a medal? I can't tell you how many times my head would go down and I'd say, no, I didn't. I was a top 20 was my best finish, or I was top 20. No, I didn't win a medal, right? And many sessions, and I'm like, okay, well, they know I didn't win. Now let's just move on, and right, because that's what they want to know. Did you win a medal? A third grade student, I wish I knew where she was today. She raised her hand, and I thought, well, what is she going to ask me? I already told them I didn't win a medal. And she said, but I bet you did the best you could. Right there, I had to like dry my tears, and I'm like, moving forward from that moment on, I said, here's a young third grader who had to teach me a lesson. Be proud of what you've done. It's self-acceptance. How many people make an Olympic team? But I think because you don't win a medal and how media surrounds that, you sometimes have to think about how you feel about not winning a medal, right? And so that is a little bit of a challenge. But I share that because of the fact that if I fast forward and I look at my purpose, my vision today, I found out what my gold medal is. And as I shared, I needed not one but two blood transfusions. And because of that, in the last 15 years, I've become a American Red Cross ambassador. And so I try to host blood drives and get out there and get people to donate or volunteer, just really help save a life, because really it was the blood on the shelves that saved my life. And so my new purpose or gold medal is, here it is. I have a chance to make a difference and to help save a life.
What I love about you sharing that story of that third grader
Oh,
is, you've obviously got a very powerful story, and even back to you sharing your childhood stories of how the comments from your grandparents was an impact, and then your dad's, impact, and your mom's impact, but how even like the youngest of children can have some of the most, biggest impacts on us too, and how just as human beings, just the little things can go so far, and just having that positive outlook, and we all can make a difference in each other's lives and how we look at things, and what we share. I loved that story because yeah, the kid, the show, the kids say the darndest things, and we all laugh at some of the silliness, but there's some powerful things too. And you got to think of that little girl. She heard that from somebody,
mhm.
somebody taught that to her, and now she's shared it with you. And it just shows how we're all, even outside of social media, are one big network of being able to help each other. And if we can have that impact on somebody, what a blessing in that day. So looking at, obviously you shared your connection with the American Red Cross. I know that was something we wanted to touch on because it's so powerful. Um, but looking at, moving into this professional career, and I know prior to your role now, you were in a different role at the Radisson, that, during COVID faced layoffs. How did, you know, rising through, through that, the challenges of the accident, being in the Olympics, that transition from being an Olympic athlete to being a professional career, going back to school and doing things you haven't done before. How did some of those learnings that you had along the way help you in being able to pivot into the role that you're in now?
Great question. I think for the COVID time, and for many, right, it was a scary time. It was bigger than me. So I think I had to really step back and not take it personally. It's a great big world out there, and so many people were dying. And with that being said, it's a job, right? And so Now the next step is sit down and figure out, what do you do next? Okay. Yes, it's scary, it's tough, it's uncertainty, but many of us were in that, right? A lot of us. And so I think it's a lot of walks, it's a lot of meditation, it's a lot of thought process. It's what do you want to do next, or again, in the same time frame is how do you help others? It isn't just about me. There is many people, but I think ultimately, um, I can say it for myself. It doesn't work for others, but I will say it for myself. Everything happens for a reason, and I think part of that layoff or potentially um, losing my position there, it opened up another set of doors. And again, I am very grateful and thankful to Morrissey Hospitality. In a way, I've come full circle, or they brought me back home now as this director of special projects and events. And so I have a new opportunity, or a new insight or light, that I get to go. And Jamie, you had just said something about make a little things make a little difference. I always say little things make a big difference. It is about the
Yeah.
details, right? It's those
Yeah.
small things, those touch points. How can we wow someone? And I always say wowing someone starts with self. Again, that's why I say every morning I look in the mirror and I say, you have a choice, or what is your attitude going to be today, right? And how can you help make a difference for others? I just think ultimately it's just trying to stay in the positive. And I know it's not always easy, but again, it's back to that choice, and or finding a partner to help you stay positive, right? What is that? What is going to be, again, your passion, your purpose, your vision? And again, if it's not by yourself, if that fire has diminished a little bit in the belly, how do we help rekindle that fire?
Mhm.
And there's one thing I will share, and I'm very proud of this. I've always said there is no dumb question. If I don't know what 1 plus 1 is, ask the question. It's okay to ask for help. I think that's important. And that's what's helped me along the way. I'm known as the question queen because I love to ask questions. And I do. It is important. You have to be able to know you can ask for help or ask a question.
I love that. And this is why it's interesting. And I'm going to go a little bit all over the place, but not totally all over the place, Michelle. Um, there's a great book called Atomic Habits. Many of us have heard of it, by James Clear. And he says something in there, which I love. He says, we rise to our expectations. Many of us have heard that, right? If you have low expectations, you won't accomplish much. But he says, and this is the piece that I love, we rise to our expectations, but we fall to the level of our systems. And our systems are, what's our routines? What's our habits? What's our disciplines? What's that fallback? And what I love is what you said after that layoff. You said, what do I do next? That's the same thing you said after the injury.
Yeah.
You didn't sit there stuck with why me? You said, okay, what do I do? How long until I could do this again? Let's get into physical therapy. Let's get going. What do I do next? So whether you knew it or not, and I'm not analyzing you because I don't analyze anymore. I haven't done therapy in years. I coach, I do coaching, but not therapy. Um, but like that is part of your makeup, right? To have gratitude and say, okay, let's dust off and let's see what steps do we have to take to keep moving forward. Um, I just love that story, and I love how you're tying it to what you did way back after that tragic injury to to more recently in a professional capacity. And when we have systems or tools, as you call them, that we fall back on, it's so important to develop those. They're like a muscle. And if you don't develop those, they're not going to be useful. I love that story.
And I'm curious, Michelle, because we talked a lot about the positives that you had, and your self affirmations, and is there anything that you didn't have from a supports perspective, or something different you would have wanted during that time, after the accident, or during your time going through the Olympics, or even with the loss of that job? Is there anything that, from a support perspective or a resource perspective, you didn't have at your disposal that you wish that somebody would have provided?
That's interesting because I think back, I think just not too far back, I think now, and I always say sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So I don't know what I didn't have, perhaps. And I don't want to get stuck at what I didn't have. And I think I'll give a good example. When I skated, you didn't make money. Now today you look collegiate athletes, and good for them that they're making money, right? I'm not going to say, oh, boo-hoo, why didn't I? But good for them. We're making progress. And I think, I don't know what I didn't have. I'm not sure what I could have had. I had great systems. And I think, again, when I think of that focus or that question, I'm about how do we make tomorrow better than today, right? So I don't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know what I didn't have. I can't pinpoint anything because, again, if I didn't have something or figured I needed something, I would ask the question or pose that question.
Yeah. And I'm guessing from what we've heard, even if you learned that there was something you might have been able to have, you would have been like, all right, well, move on. I would guess, which
Yeah.
is awesome and speaks to your wonderful character and what you bring into the world, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, we are nearing the end of the hour. I want to be sensitive and aware of that. I'm wondering, Michelle, given all the experiences you've had, some of which we kind of talked through today, if there was a younger person, maybe an athlete or maybe just someone navigating their professional career, dealing with adversity, what advice would you give them?
Not what I've already shared. So I guess truly, if I'm looking in a mirror right now and I'm looking at that young individual, yes, right, it's okay to be different, dare to be different, really. Yeah. Believe in yourself, and it's okay to want more, to be unique, be creative. There's going to be challenges, right? But we figure out whether you need help navigate those challenges. That's what makes us bigger, better, brighter people. But it starts with self and loving self. And again, don't be afraid to have a dream. And I remember a young coach once told me, a dream is like a ladder. You start at the bottom and you climb that ladder because eventually you'll reach the top, and that's where that dream is. So that's perhaps what I would say to that younger individual navigating this big, bold world.
Yep, that's wonderful. Wow. Jamie, any additions? Anything you want to add?
Just very powerful. Yes. And I just so appreciate everything that you've shared and your story of hope and, how, the American Red Cross, with the blood drives and how you've been able to give back for what was able to help you. It's just such a powerful story. And I just thank you so much for sharing it, because I was inspired today and I hope our listeners were too. Thank you all for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Thrive with R3.
R3 is a workplace behavioral health pioneer and innovator, providing rapid response and ongoing behavioral health solutions that help people and organizations recover, perform, and thrive in the wake of disruption and stress.
For more episodes, insights, and resources, visit thrivewithr3.com.